Welcome, everybody, to another episode. Hi, John,
Hello.
of the Paranormal Rangers. We are all here today, and we are so grateful to be with you. It has been a summer of travel, it's been a summer of a lot of personal things in our life that are going on, but we are back together, and it's so good to have everybody here today. How are you guys doing? Nice to see you both.
Good to see you too. Good to see you,
Yeah,
John.
doing good.
That's good. Yeah,
Well,
I'm doing great. I'm doing
you're
great.
you're doing great, Stan. How's everything with the book? Are you doing well with it and still promoting?
Everything's, I'm working on, as you know, the second book, and
Hmm.
so that one's coming along. I'm enjoying writing stuff for it. It's a different style of writing because this one's it's fictional, but it's based on one of the investigations Sean and I conducted. So,
That's
paranormal
wonderful.
UFO. Yeah.
More of your law enforcement background plus the paranormal aspect as well. That's great. John,
Uh,
would you like to tell us what's been going on with you? Let the audience know where we've all been.
Oh, I had some surgery done, and I'm done with it now. So hopefully, I won't have to go back and get anything else done.
Well, it's good to have you here, and you're on the way of health and mending. And we look forward to interacting with our audience that comes here live every week to support us. And we're so grateful to all to be here. I was just recently in a filming with George Nori and on his Gaia show, and I had a wonderful time. It's going to come out in a couple of months, but once that comes out, we'll promote that a little bit. But today we are going to go into our show, which is the Gate Portal, a spiritual perspective. And we do have somebody here in our audience that is going to join us today. And we're going to bring on Art Hardy. Hi, Art.
Hey,
Nice to have you on the
hi.
show again.
Hi. Sorry, there's something wrong with my camera, so we're just gonna have to sit here with the black screen. I apologize.
Oh no, that's okay. We have had some technical difficulties during the last few broadcasts, and we've all been trying to deal with whatever happens on this show, and it seems to happen. Welcome, welcome. Um, so I'm going to put the question out there: did anybody celebrate the Lionsgate portal?
No, I didn't.
well, I recognized that it was going on. I have friends uh, closely utilize different types of uh, astrological, and zodiac type of events, and they will make comments to me. And for me, I recognize that, you know, as indigenous peoples, we have that connection and ties to uh, the astrological stuff. I mean, you've got locations like Chaco Canyon that are well known for its connection to the stars and the role that plays in our lives and stuff. So I recognize it, and I mean, if you go and you look at other cultures like Chinese culture, and
Mm-hmm.
they have close ties to the zodiac uh, totems or symbols and stuff like that. So I think, with most indigenous peoples and most tribes, there is a connection to these elements, whether it's the land or the stars or the universe.
Well, the fact that they use the word portal, and to your
Right.
point, Stan, it was a Chinese kind of their manifestation of powerful manifestation of meditation time to manifest your dreams or whatever you want to have happen. And they said this was one of the most powerful ones that has been on the earth for a very long time. And I had the fortunate opportunity to be on the West Coast by the ocean and was able to meditate that in my life. And, it's whatever happens in the future will be a part of the world I create. So a lot of the times we are creating our own world of the existence we live in. So in a way, that is a portal opening up energy and opportunity in our life to get what we want.
Well, just as you said, it's viewed as a portal, a time from uh, July 26th through August 12th, with the 8th being the most concentrated date within that time frame. And it's said that this is a time for people to reflect and to make those changes in their lives for betterment. I mean, John, you just recently had a change in your life that that will reflect for the rest of your life, during that time frame. So I think, it is a time for reflection. And although I think there's a lot of portals that occur at different times, some of them come and go. We don't even recognize that there's this powerful connection during these times, except maybe when we look back during that period and say, wow, this was happening to me during this time, and it was within a certain time frame. So
Well, one of the things that everybody needs to understand out there is that we manifest all of the time, whether it's good or bad. Now, if you go around life and you're kind of like, today's terrible, it's going to be horrible, I don't want to go to work, I hate it, that's going to manifest in your life. And you're going to go to work, and yes, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be horrible because you brought it about. Words have power. And if you are negative in your words about other people and about yourself, those things will come about. Just as if you're positive and you manifest good things will happen. And it's been said that's why they call it spelling, because you are creating a spell with your words. So words become very important. We manifest all the time. It's how you do it that's important. If you're going to be positive, make it count.
I was taught as a child, unless you've got something to say, keep your mouth shut. We were taught, when adults are talking and communicating, you didn't interrupt, and we were taught these things that, just like John says, words are very powerful, very important. If you say something that hurts another person's feelings, whether it's deliberate or even accidental, that person that's injured by those words, they're not going to forget that for a long time. And I know, going back with the Navajo culture, that words and even thoughts, your thoughts can manifest these things, just like what John said. I don't know if Art has some thoughts about that.
Yeah. So manifestation, we do know that we have the power to manifest in various ways. And I think one of those ways is just saying it out loud, right? You just say it out loud and you get that energy out into the universe, and almost immediately. So There's that story about that actor Jim Carrey who basically told himself, "I'm going to be the first actor to get $10 million for a movie," and not too long after he had manifested that or had said that, he had manifested it, and lo and behold, he was one of the first actors to get paid $10 million for doing a movie. So I mean, it really begins with how you would utilize your energy. Your words are energy, your thoughts are energy, and if you can understand that, you can really focus that attention to where you can move the universe for yourself in such a way that it will happen. And that's where we're at with prayer. That's where we're at with spirituality, all the various uses of meditation. That's how we do this. So, and I think that when it comes to curing yourself, you have that power to do it in the same instance where you're utilizing the energy from within yourself. You're talking and you're hearing your own words. And we've talked about this before, where, you have that power as a godlike entity yourself.
Mm-hmm. Correct. I agree with that. Art, I had a thought come to me when you were speaking about our ancestral ties to the trauma that we experienced in our culture. Was that a manifestation of somebody else's manifestation? Or was that something we were just kind of surprised to have come throughout our tribes? Or, that's a very powerful a question to ask, but did the tribes manifest that as a whole? Because it happened to a whole lot of us.
Right. Again, I guess it's just really the focus of what we're thinking about at the time. You got to think about the old days. We had technology. There was just they had multiple ceremonies going, probably a lot more than what we utilize to this day, and probably a lot more private than what we do today. And so, in that sense, now you have individuals within a little community who are very serious about what they're doing, and everyone ends up participating in those events and in ceremonies. And so you have miraculous things that are happening. To them, it's not miraculous, it's not a miracle. To them, it's just business as usual, because they've been doing this all their lives. And when you start thinking about how big a community was in the old days, they're very small. They're actually small groups of little people here and there that probably didn't communicate with one another, other than maybe having a runner go out and say, this is what we're doing over here, maybe, or whatever you want to trade with, et cetera, et cetera. And very territorial in that instance too. So you think about that, and then you think about how they came up with all of these different ceremonies, because you can go into, I'm in Arizona, and I can go to New Mexico, and they definitely do the ceremonies different, and they have different stories. They have different ways of thinking and understanding the way that these ceremonies are done. I come back to Arizona, and then I tell my family, like, this is how I seen it done. This is what they're doing over there. Of course, you have that argument of, oh, they're doing it wrong, but they still yield the same results, is what I'm getting at. So is that something that we're all destined to become a part of, no matter what we do? And you were talking about the tribe and the communities. So now you got to think on that picture. If each of these individual communities are operating away from each other, and they're kind of in their own silos, but they're still able, I don't know what that noise was, sorry, but they manifest themselves into this what we might call reality at that point, and somehow we've all drawn to the same conclusion. So if there was tribes, hundreds of miles away, who were creating ceremonies, and that were very similar to what we're doing a couple hundred miles away, so does that mean they had some type of telepathy that was going on as well? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to think about this, and a lot of different aspects you can throw, like probabilities and things like that. But what it comes down to is we don't really understand how strong our mind is, and we don't understand just how far that power can go when we really focus it, and we have a group of individuals with us that can focus that power. Just one little ceremony, I've witnessed a cancer patient walk out free, just free of cancer, just completely healed. And there was no more than 20 of us in that circle. So how was that done? How did the universe hear us? What was it that we said, and could we recreate that again to where we have another miraculous miracle come about without using chemotherapy, without using all of the modern science to heal these individuals? So there's a lot to be said about what we're discussing today, and I think for where we're at scientifically, we haven't really gone down that rabbit hole just yet to see how powerful we can be. But then again, if we do, what are the consequences of that? So, and I think that the government has a lot to do with this, where they don't want us to self-heal because pharmaceutical companies will lose money, et cetera, et cetera. You have a whole chain of events that can happen when we actually learn how to figure out how to manifest our own power.
Yeah, I agree, Art, about the healing. I think we have those abilities. You look at these other cultures, like, let's say, within the Indian culture, from India, and you have these gurus that are capable, yogis that are capable of healing themselves and doing really miraculous things that I think we all possess those abilities, but we have lost that connection and that teaching and understanding of ourself and our spirituality and the connection to the universe to be able to heal ourselves like that. Our ancestors have taught, and I've heard this so many times, that everything in the universe and in our world is interconnected. Everything, and by a type of force.
Well, I think the other thing we've lost too, guys, is the fact of community and getting into solitude with Mother Nature, going and interacting with nature and getting the answers, and they are there, and that's a healing power within itself. Where I'll tell a short story. I went up to the Uinta Basin and was taken up 10,000 altitude feet up, and there's we know about the bear root, right? Here it is, and this is great. And I wish I should have taken that off, but it was like Spirit told me how much to pick, what it's used for, and just that interaction with Spirit caused me to cleanse and to be emotional and to connect. And I think we've lost that a little bit. I think this is why when we're asked to meditate and to get the intentions of how do we heal ourselves, how do we heal the world, just one person at a time. And that's
right now, we're in a state of really universally so materialistic, and we've lost that connection, just as you've said. I know for you, Michelle, you have that connection to nature, and you're always drawn to the outdoors, and that's a place of healing for you, a place of renewal. And I grew up in that as a child, that world where I would get lost out there in nature and in the woods, and there's no fear or anything like that. That was when I was closest, I felt, to what people would refer to as their creator. And
yeah, one of the things that I wanted to bring up was that this idea of tradition and ceremonies and things like that. One of my other tribes is, they call it Apache Tribe of Oklahoma. They used to call it Kiowa Apache. is how the ethnographers who came in noticed that this small group was camping next to the Kiowas. So they referred to them as Kiowa Apaches. They are Plains Apaches. So they lived on the plains. They stayed in teepees and they went to war with, in ally with a lot of other tribes. Now, in the because of the boarding schools and the idea that we're going to eliminate culture, a lot of the tribe's original dances disappeared. And during the late 50s, the women of the tribe got together and they said, we need to bring back our dance. And so they brought it back slowly. They found they had to do historical, look at all the history of how dance was done and what the songs were and what order they were in. So they had a society that came up called the Blackfoot Society, run by the Redbone, or they call it the Redbone Society. Later on, another group came along, and what Art alluded to, they had their own ceremony, and they did it differently, not wrong. They just didn't agree with how the ceremony was done, and just little tiny details. And so they created the Chalapa Society, which is a mirror of the Redbone Society. Both of them were operating at the same time. The tribe looked at that, and believe it or not, they actually said, they're upholding tradition. So let them both go. We're not going to step in. We're not going to, say one is better than the other or anything like that. They just said, tradition is being retaught and upheld. So, we encourage that. Now, within that society, there's the main society is called Manatee. These are the men, the warriors. After that, you have Kinlatiti. These are people my age that are the commanders and do the strategy for the battles. And you have the Kasawi Society, which are the little kids that are coming up that are being taught. And then you have a women's society. And the women's society is secret. So the men aren't allowed at all. And, that I think that's how it should be. Because if we ever got in there and tried to understand it, it would just drive us nuts. So, best to stay out, keep our nose out of it. But that's how the society's put together. And I got to dance in those dances, those ceremonies. And it was really something. So, when Art talks about how they do things differently from this area and that area, it's all good because they're upholding those traditions, even though we're not familiar with the Eastern tradition or the Western tradition. They're still upholding them.
Well, we lost so much knowledge when it was taken away and it couldn't be taught. And so what was taught was the verbal communication that was handed down by our, ancestors. And sometimes you can't remember everything. And I like what you said, John. At least they're reteaching the tradition as best as they know and the knowledge that was given back. Art, I have a question for you. In your practice as a medicine man, do you feel like that some of that knowledge is lost? And have you come across that in your practice?
We have lost tons of information through the years from what we might consider being an original form of some of the ceremonies that we possess now and we utilize in practice. Case in point is, the person that taught me has passed away, but I feel that a lot of the information there that was being shared with me, it wasn't everything. We have a teaching that goes, you'll never learn everything in this life. And based upon that simple teaching, you'll live your whole life and you'll never know it all. You won't understand everything you want to understand about the universe, about life, about anything we might discuss on this show, or any discussion you might have privately. You'll never be, we call them subject matter experts, but really, how much of an expert can you be when you haven't lived, a life full of just the one topic? So there's always something new to learn. Circumstances are always changing. So you have new sicknesses that are coming out that weren't present 200 years ago, 100 years ago, that these medicine men were not, any medicine man was not aware of or had the capability to understand at the time. And science, industrialization, westernization, all of the things that have come up now have changed the way that a medicine man would have a perspective, his perspective on how he's going to be helping anyone. 100 years ago, there was no terminology for cancer. There was no cancer in those days because they didn't understand it. They didn't know what it was. It was just an illness of the body, if it existed at that time. And so science comes along and starts teaching all these Native Americans, cultures that weren't really westernized at the time. This is the term that you're going to be utilizing with that particular sickness, and it's going to be called cancer, or it's going to be called dementia, or it's going to be called something else. But up until that point, we never knew what those names were. The only thing we have generalized terms for sickness. In Navajo, there's a lot of ceremonies that just go back to one particular one all the time, and that's the Hachonja ceremony, and that's in Navajo. So that particular ceremony is kind of a broad ceremony. It's a generalized ceremony that kind of invokes all the various sicknesses that are out there, including issues with death and related to the very dark things that this reality has to offer. And so how do we understand what's happening today versus 100 years ago? And I'll be the first to tell you that I don't know it all. And I'm constantly learning something new. I'm constantly having to figure out new ways of doing things for people with various issues that I was never taught, or there was never a teaching for, and diagnosing things that are just maybe even paranormal, beyond paranormal.
Yes.
And so we have a teaching that goes into the darkness, and we say that we do have darkness, but there is darkness beyond this darkness. And that's where you find other things that you cannot, you're not allowed to witness. You're not allowed to understand. You're not allowed to hear, for us being five-fingered beings. And so is that where these sicknesses come from? Is that where illnesses and mental issues, mental health issues come from? And how do you communicate with those certain deities or entities that have that power over those types of sicknesses? And you see, that's where our culture comes from, is we apply it with a story. We apply it with some type of God, or maybe a giant of some kind, a negative one, so to speak. If it's a sickness, it's going to be a negative type of deity that we have to go up against. But how do you name those deities so that that sickness will dissolve? Those are very sacred things in very sacred ways. The things that I've shared here are just they're on the surface. They're not even in the they're not in depth as to what our culture really can expose about life in general. And to share all of that knowledge, and do it publicly, would it get the respect that it demands? That's one of the things that I always worry about, is when I talk about these things, is it getting the respect, or is it just going to be criticized like everything else we do in the world now? Nothing but criticism. And so if you take it serious enough and you go down that path of a medicine man and you start to learn some of these songs, some of these prayers, and it's going to be very specific, because the person you're learning from is only going to know so much. So then you have to jump off of that person and jump onto the next guy and say, hey, this is what I've learned, but I want to learn more about this. So it's kind of like when people go to school and they want to become a doctor, they only focus on certain parts. Like you have a radiologist, you might have someone who's a throat, ears, nose doctor, and so they have their specialties. But even in that instance, you never have a doctor who's a specialist on everything. And that includes spirituality. I hardly ever see a doctor say, when I go into the ER or into any hospital and I have a conversation with the doctors, I always ask them, are you a spiritual man? Do you believe in God? Do you believe in anything other than science? Because what they're there to do is to fix the body, to rebalance the chemicals, or do something of that nature. Now, if they believed in God, they're not going to sit in front of you and say, I'm a doctor of this, and then just start praying on you and say, and now you're healed and now you're ready to go. So you have to consider that as something else when it comes to Western medicine and Western teaching versus the Native Americans out there that understand a different way, a different philosophy, a different utilization of energy. And what does that mean? Because if a doctor says I'm spiritual, comes up to you and doesn't have the belief or the energy behind it, he's not going to heal you. So you have a person that's been learning all his life how to control energy, how to utilize it in such a way that is going to heal your body. As molecularly, we're talking about you as a human being, and you're made up of water. 70% of you is water. Now you can manipulate water at its very at its source. You can do that. We can do that with our vocal cords, with our frequencies that come out of our mouths. We can do that. We've seen people do that with their minds because for whatever reason, some people are blessed with very strong telepathic powers that have that ability to manipulate mass and at a molecular level. So why aren't we focused on that? And again, it goes back to money. It goes back to people got to make a living and other things. But if we were solely focused on just fixing the human being, the human mind, and the human soul, imagine that society and what that would look like and where this discussion would go. We would probably be talking about the other side of it, where we'd be saying we need to look at the science of it, not the spiritual side of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Western medicine is now looking at frequency development. You hear about things like medical beds, and certain water technologies, nano healing technologies, and
Correct.
it seems like they're trying to catch up with something that we've always practiced within our culture. To your point, the music, the drumming, the ceremonies. We don't want to get explicit here about what's inside those ceremonies, but all of that's incorporated. And as you know, as a medicine man or as a Native American, those vibrations and frequencies are very important to us.
John knows of ceremonies that have occurred where individuals have been healed by the proximity of where they are within those ceremonies, and it's very powerful, enough to heal a person, completely heal a person that, according to Western science and Western medicine, this person's, stage 4 this or whatever.
Yeah, and again, we're looking at this idea of energy, frequency, and vibration all coming together. And I truly believe that there's something to this. But we don't look at that side because we're told you need to be scientific.
Right.
You need to have something repeatable over and over again, and then only then we'll study it. But they don't look at spirituality at all. That's not included in that deal. And yeah, we had a woman that was in stage 4 cancer. They told her she had 6 months or less to live. And she asked to be put behind the staffs during a ceremony and some songs done for her for healing. And she showed up the next year. and she says that the cancer is gone. The doctors don't understand it. They called their doctor friends from other hospitals, told them to come over and take a look at these results and do more CAT scans and everything else. And they just, to them, it was just a miracle.
Where it's so much of our everyday life as Native Americans, they practice all the time. That's why we have a hierarchy. You know, I'm not going to say a hierarchy, but we have a system of leaders that medicine men, we go to them as we would today go to the medical doctor, but they can tune us up, tune our frequencies, tune our vibrations, and get us rhythmic again and cleared out, and our spirits can be whole and complete and spiritual in itself. But it's really our minds and the manifestations of what our minds are doing and the intent of our heart.
Right, and we do exist in the third dimensional and fourth dimensional state already, and and I say that because your body is three-dimensional, but your spirit is fourth dimensional.
Exactly.
One of the comments earlier by Bino was that we really need to listen and be in tune with our body. And I would dare say our mind and, the spirituality, all of it, is interconnected. And I think we really have to listen and learn who we are, what it is that makes us unique. I mean, we don't need a doctor to listen to us with a stethoscope. If we know we have pneumonia or these kind of things, we already know, we can feel these things within our body, that it's a foreign thing. And so I think we do need to be in tune to, to our own body and our mind and spirituality.
Well, it's really interesting, and I will say one thing, and it may seem like a negative, but it's not against myself. I was taping for the show that I recently flew back to be on, and the question that was brought up to me about 2 or 3 times is, you're seeing paranormal at a very experiential, timeline in your life. Why do you think these things are happening to you? And I, in my mind, was sitting there going, I don't know, but I did know. And what I should have said is, because of my spiritual connection to my culture, my spiritual connection to a higher power than myself. And for some reason, when I sat there, it was like it wasn't the right time to say that, as I am now saying it on this show. It is our connections to our own spirituality. And are we ready as a culture or society willing to hear that? We need to start coming together in the healing path of spirituality.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes we have to step back from ourselves, and view ourselves from the outside as a independent or almost as a third party, and look at our behavior, look at how we are living our lives, and for betterment. Constantly living our lives to try to be better than we were the day before, and to live in a positive manner.
John, did you have anything to say? I know I saw you leaning forward, and I know that your mind's going like crazy.
Oh, it's my mind is always going like crazy, and sometimes I wish I could put the brakes on, but that's just me. I'm constantly going in my mind, and it just occurred to me that everybody, science tells us, just look at science. And we really need to be looking at spirit, at who we are deep down. And that introspection is tough.
It is.
When you start in, I've often heard it's like peeling an onion. There's layer after layer after layer, and when you get down to certain layers, it's going to make you cry. And
Hmm.
that's just being blunt. Is It's not a lot of times a cheerful process, because there are things in our lives that we actually have to deal with in order to get better. And so that introspection is going to cause just a little bit of unease when you're really doing it right. So meditate, look at yourself. Remember, when you point a finger at somebody, there's several fingers pointing back. So that's what I was always told, and I was always told that keep digging into your personal self, even if you find something that's not very pretty, expose it and keep going.
Yeah, we've lost Art. He's having some technical difficulties with his connection. That seems to be the theme of our summer this year.
I keep saying that government van is just down the street blocking the signal.
Well, these are really great conversations to have because we are also dealing with it in our own daily lives. And it's wonderful to have all of us back on. It's wonderful to have Art to give us a perspective of being a medicine man on the show, especially of this topic, of manifestation and getting what we want in life. And remember that we are the spiritual beings. And I liked how we said we're both in the world of the third dimension and the fourth state. We don't think that way. It's just not our normal way of living. Stan, you had a thought.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment in that me and my sister Deborah this past weekend attended the Santa Fe art market, and that has grown into a really uh, mind bending experience.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I go there, as soon as I'm walking from the parking lot up to the square where this is located, the first thing that I remind myself of is those Navajos that were forced marched on the long walk and were paraded around that square uh, before the people of Santa Fe, the capital of New Mexico, and then continued on marching them out to Bosque Redondo or Fort Sumner. But I always, every time I've gone there, I always stop to reflect that. But even though that's a very negative image, that picturing that suffering and what occurred,
Mm-hmm.
look at the triumph of all of those, the Navajo and other indigenous peoples that come to that market, that are there, that have achieved the ability to create some really mind blowing artwork. And, they, through their ancestors that were on the long walk,
Mm-hmm.
they've survived, and not only survived, they've excelled to this day, where some of the artists there, their gift is unbelievable. But I always stop to reflect that there was Navajos that were forced marched through, paraded through that square, and
Mm-hmm.
but today their ancestors have survived, and especially a lot of young people. And so anyway, I look at that, and I always view that as a positive thing, because we did survive. we did survive the long walk. Yes, they did try to exterminate Native Americans, whether it's Trail of Tears or the Long Walk, and we've survived that, and not only survived, but we've exceeded and very successful.
Well, it's our history of resilience and that we are not going to be destroyed, that we keep coming back, even probably more powerful. To your point, the artwork depicts the resilience and the power that each generation is given through their ancestry. Hi, Art. Now we've got you live. That's great. Good to have you on again.
Good to
I
see
know.
you, Art. Cool.
Is he gonna? Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Art?
I don't know if you can
It
hear us.
wouldn't be us if we didn't have these little quips of technology in our lives. But it's, if there's any last thoughts, I know we're coming up on about 5 minutes left, or let me look at that clock. Yeah, we're coming up on 5 or 6 minutes. But if there's any thoughts that you guys want to bring forward to the audience, that would be great.
Well, I would just like to say that, like with the Lion's Gate portal opening, whether you, like John says, put a label on it, this same phenomenon among all of these indigenous cultures, whether it's the 574 Native American tribes in the United States or the 630 in Canada, First Nations peoples, or the 68 indigenous peoples in the Mexican culture and in Mexico. Be aware of these things around you. Learn.
Mm-hmm.
We're on a journey of learning throughout our physical life in this world, which in my view will continue on with our spirit and soul after this life, continuing on to the next dimension. And but pay attention to those things. Pay attention to the sacred and what's important in your life and for your loved ones.
And Spirit
Yeah.
does talk to us. We interrupt it, don't we, with our technology. We like to watch TV. We like to see this. It's constant interruptions in our life. John, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say to, be positive in your life. Even it's hard to do sometimes. I mean, circumstances,
Especially right
all
now.
kinds,
Yeah, we're
create
being
all
positive.
kinds of havoc,
Yeah.
But it's, for me at the lowest points in my life, to go dance at a powwow and hear the drums was the most relaxing thing that could happen to me, and it made me feel good. So there are things that can be done to kind of bring you out of that funk, and realize that there's a bigger world out there than we realize, and we can attach to that and make it work for us. The sky's the limit. You can do anything. You can go back to school. You can get a degree. You can do all these other things. It's just what you want to do.
I want to show my sea turtle totem that was made for me. It's very sacred to me and very important. And I think these totems that we have in our life, we make those connections with these animal spirits at times. I think they connect with us to our spirit and our soul. So please listen to that and limit the amount of negativity that you're exposed to. Limit yourself with the amount of news. I mean, today, every news program you turn on, it's just something negative, negative, negative. Try to get out of that. It can make you really depressed listening to that. You've got to get out of that, go for a walk, go out in nature, do like Michelle and go camping over the weekend and get in touch with nature and the animals and these kind of things. Thank you, Art, for being here with us. I
in
really
spirit.
appreciate all of the information you bring to the table.
Valuable.
You're amazing. So thank you.
Thank
And
you.
John and Michelle too.
Thank you, Stan. Yeah, I was just going to make a comment. You know, I was riddled with a bunch of phone calls this week. A lot of my friends are having heart attacks. A lot of them are going into surgery. Some have cancer. Some are dying. And I glamped last night in my backyard to touch Mother Earth. You know, even if it's in your tent, you got to have a nice tent because we have the ability to have these things. Really uplifts the spirit, to your point about going to powwows. We all have our own way of meditating and connecting back to staying positive. And that for me is a stay positive thing.
Listen to music.
Music's another one. Yeah. It's so wonderful to have Art on, even though he's here in spirit now.
I'm back now.
Oh,
Thank
hi,
you.
Art. Were there any closing thoughts you'd like to say? I think we do have, we have about 4 minutes left.
No, I just want to say thank you for having me on the show, and sorry about my internet. It usually isn't this shaky, but today is kind of weird. But you know, just to kind of go over everything and recap, I think that in the interest of humankind and mankind and all of life in itself, there's been a huge shift. There's been a huge shift, and I think we all have to be aware of that. We need to understand it a little bit more. And if you're a spiritual person, start to practice, you know, to discipline yourself with your mind and your thoughts, then that'll probably be your best way of defense against the shift of power and negative energy that's out there now. And that's pretty much all I got to say to the chat. And thank you, Benno from Oz. Appreciate the comments in the comment section.
Yeah, thank you.
Remember one thing with the negative energy that's present in our world and society, that isn't going to last forever. I mean, these things are like a bell curve. They'll peak and then they'll decline. And so hang out for a while. It won't always be that same way.
And if you guys haven't picked up your copy of this book, go out, get it today. And we are so grateful that John is back from healing. Continue to heal strongly, John. We know you've been through some ordeals. And we continue to put prayers out to everybody. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, audience, for being here today and supporting us through our show, and for your wonderful fetish there, the little turtle, Mother Earth, Gaia. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.